discussing yesterday we were discussing about the Spring Boot, how to convert a Spring application into Spring Boot. We have started discussing on it. Okay. Okay, in a Spring Boot there will not be any XML like Spring. There will not be any XML file. There will not be an XML. Then then how to make a classes as a Spring Bean, that also we will see today. And before that one, so how to create a Spring Boot projects. Yesterday we have started we have started and we already seen it. How to create a Spring Boot project. So there is a Spring initializer is there. So with the help of that we can create a Spring Boot project. Sir sir don't think directly jump into the Spring Boot application. Just try to first try to know what is the structure of the Spring Boot project when you are using a Maven, and which files which you will be stored in which folder. All these things just try to know it and try to know it. Okay. Now if you just go here, you just go here. Yes. So how to create a Spring Boot project? So you can create a Spring Boot project with the help of Spring Initializer start.spring.io URL website. Start.spring.io. Start.spring. There, once you enter the start.spring.io, you can give a necessary details in which language you want to create a Spring Boot. Spring Boot application can be developed in three languages: Groovy, Kotlin, and Java. So you can give a Java version, you can give a Spring Boot version as well, and you can give a, if it is a Maven project, Maven build tool project, you can use if you are trying to use a Maven, then give a group ID, artifact ID, and version of the project. Then whatever the jars you want to add, just add it. Here itself you can add it. You need not to go and search in a Google to get the dependencies. Like see here, start.spring.io. Here itself, here itself you will get it. Here itself you will get it. All these things here itself you will get it. Here itself. Add dependencies. Whatever the dependency you want to be added you want to add for a Spring Boot, you can add here itself. You can add here itself. Okay, whereas in a Spring there is no provision like that. See, you don't want to add a says minus it, that's it. Then generate, click on a generate, then after download it. Once you click on a download, it will be downloaded like this. It will be downloaded as a zip file, then unzip it and import to the Eclipse or STS or IntelliJ. Import to the Eclipse or any IDE, then use it. Clear my point? Then sir, I don't want to, every time I don't want to go and create a Spring Boot project using spring.start.io. Is there any other easy way? Yes, there is a. So you go here, file, new Spring Starter project. File, new Spring Starter project. When you click on a file, new Spring Starter project, this is also uses Spring Initializer only, start.spring.io. Very important, sir. This is very important. Start.spring.interview point of view. Then give the Spring Boot project name. Then select a, you want Groovia, you want Kotlina, just select a Maven. Then Java version. If you want to develop in a Java, so then select 23 or 21 or 8, 17, whatever you want. Then packaging, you want to package as a Java archive or web archive. Sir, usually if you whatever the usually in a core Java level, so jar means Java archive, var means web archive. So web applications, like applications which are developed in a servlets and JSP, web applications which are developed in a servlets and JSPs, that would be var. They will packaging it as a var. But using a Spring Boot, you can develop both. Both you can develop it, standalone application, web application, and you can keep as a jar only. No problem, not at all a problem. Then language is Java. Then give a group ID, artifact ID, version, description, and default package you can give. Once give it, just click on a next. Here, whatever the which Spring Boot version you want. Here I want Spring Boot version is 3.4.0. Then do it. Then Spring Security, Spring Web. I just want to add Spring Web in itself. Here I just want to add Spring Web only. Since this is a first application, I just want to add this only. Later point, later stage of point, I can add Lombok and others also. Spring Boot Data JPA also we will add it. So after that, just to finish it, it will be generated like this. It will be generated like this. If you can see the structure. So far up to here we have seen yesterday. So what is this entire structure? Let's take this entire structure into web, into paintbrush. Yes, don't save. Let's paintbrush. Here this is. So here what each and every folder contains. Each and every folder what it contains. Generally, src slash main slash java, whatever the logic you are writing, whatever the code you are writing, generally here we will write it. Clear my point? Whatever the code we are planning to write, sir. So why this src slash main slash java, all these things you will come in a, you will come to know in a, you will come to know in a maven tool. You will come to know in a maven tool. But so maven structure is this one. So the main classes, all the main classes and the all entire logic we need to write in a src slash main slash java. So if you can expand this src slash main slash java, see whatever the package you have given as a default while creating a project, then this package has came. Here this package has came. Then next one is src slash main slash resources. Let's say you want to read some data from a dot properties file or dot YAML file, YML file. You want to read it. You want to read it. So those type of static content we will write in a src slash main slash resources. For example, you want to write a username, password of a DB and configurations of a DB in a application.properties file. Then that application.properties file will be written in a src slash main slash resources folder. Clear my point? You want to show a yes, see here already a inbuilt application.properties file as already there in a Spring Boot project in a inside a src slash means as resources folder. It's already there. By default it came. Sir, why this? Sir, why this static and template folder, sir? This is very, very important when you are working with the time leaf. When you are working with the theme leaf, this is very, very, this folder, static folder will be very, very important. Whatever the theme leaf content is there, that entire theme leaf content you will write here in a static and templates. Like you are trying to include some images, that images you will put it in a static and templates folders. So this YAML for in a application.properties file, DB configurations, generally we will do it like spring dot spring dot um, spring dot username something. It is yes, spring dot username. See, these many entries are there. So all these application dot properties file contains key value pairs are. See, username you can give a username as a Karthik, anything. I'm just giving a normal one. This is a key and this is a value. So in a runtime, our Spring Boot application will use this application.properties file internally and connects to the database, and it will connect to the database. So for this purpose, this src slash main slash resources folder as introduced. Got my point? Sir, if anyone asks why we need src slash main slash resources folder, or explain a Spring Boot structure, project structure, explain this one. Main slash Java is used to write a main logic, and main slash resources used to write a static content and to write a application dot properties file content like this. Then src slash test slash Java. Sir, do you know unit testing? JUnit, JUnit, Java unit testing. To do the unit testing, whatever the logic you have written here, here in this src slash main slash folder, Java folder, so those entire code need to be checked at developer level. That is called JUnit testing. Unit testing, you need to do it. Those unit testing related classes, all the classes you will write here itself. We will write here itself. We will write here only. I think for this one, for last we have written here, I guess. Oh no. So what is that? For the last batch, I have thought here itself, I guess. I don't know. Maybe in different workspace. Okay. So those test classes, all test classes, we will write slash. Systems already knows it. See here, all the Java related jars is present here. Java related jars is present here. If we can expand this one, see java.sql package. See here, java.sql classes are there. Okay. All the Java related jars were there here. Inside a java.base, see java.base. So for example, arrays class is present in a java.util package. Yes. See here, go here, java.util package is here. Arrays class. Arrays class. Like this. Base64 class. Sir, base64 encoding, decoding, which is introduced in Java 1.8. Base64. Yes. Collection class. So all these classes, whatever the Java classes are there, all these classes are present in java.base jar. See here, java.lang package, java.neo package, java.math package, all java.util package, all this will be available here. So inside a JRE system library. And Maven dependencies, whatever the dependencies you have been added whenever while you are creating a project, then those related jars are present in a Maven dependencies class. So then why this target folder and this is? So when you just run the application, when you just compile this application, when you just compile this application, so what happens? Dot class files will be generated, right? For all the classes, dot class file will be generated now. So those dot class file will be present in a this target folders. This folder. This is a this is a just a short form of this target folder. This SRC is there now. So this is a just a short form for this one. Short form for these two. Clear? Clear my point? And once if you compile this program, this compilation program, once you run this program, right, compile this program, dot class file will be generated. That dot class file, all dot class file will be generated in a target folder. All dot class file will be present in a target folder. And when you do maven clean install, when you do maven clean install, maven itself will generate a jar. That jar also will be stored in a target folder. Target folder. And what is this pom.xml? Plain object model, this pom.xml will contain all the dependencies required to run the application. For example, here, see here, if you open the target, this is an old project, na? So if you can open here, if you can open the target folder, see here, all this jar is present, and surefire reports are also present. That means how much time it took to run the application. All this surefire report also it will be present in this target folder. Target folder. Sir, I want to show the I want to see open the jar. Yes, you can open this jar as well. No issues. You can go and decompile it. It will be open. No issues. So if you run a sonar, that sonar report also will be present in a target folder. Generally, you can delete this target folder. You can delete this target folder. Then again, you can run a Maven clean install. Again, same data will come. Same data will come. Generally, in a real time, what we will do, whenever you are doing a Maven clean install, that means whenever we are building the project, then we will delete this target folder because it may contain a old data, right? It may contain a old data. That's why we will always delete the target folder, then we will create it. So this is the Maven structure. This is the Spring Boot structure. Spring Boot structure. So observe carefully here, com.tech. This is the package name you have already created while creating a project. Okay, so if you can see here, there is a one class is present. There is a one class is present. It's already generated. It's already generated. Public class, my first Spring Boot application class. It's already came inbuilt with the Spring Boot, and it is having a main method, public static void main. This is a main method, and along with that, there is a one more small code snippet also came along with the this public static void main. Spring application dot run. Spring application dot run. Then it is taking a parameter as a what is the your application name and arguments. What is your application name? So my application name is my first Spring Boot application. So this is only it is having it. Now go inside this one. This is a Spring application is a class. Spring application is a class. Then I'm just calling a run method. Now tell me, is this run method is a static method or non-static method? This is a Spring
Static
application is a
method.
class. Sir.
Static method.
Perfect, sir. It is a static method. By see here directly you can tell because Spring application is a class. On the class name directly we are calling a run method. That means it is a static method. So open it. Open it. See public static configurable application context. So what this run method is doing? What this run method is doing? Just press Control and open implementation. Yes. So this is a static method whose return type is configurable application context. Then, then again open this run method. Then here, then run, open it. So if you observe here at the line number 307, configurable application context is equals to null. Then here, line number 15, create application context. That means what is meant by application context? What what do you know? Whenever you just heard about the term called application context, what it is? It is a container. That means in a Spring Boot, container directly, it only creating it. You no need to create explicitly. You no need to create it. That means whatever the whatever the work we have done in a Spring here, in a Spring here, in a Spring, in a Spring here, we only created the container. We only created a container and we only loaded the XML. But in a Spring Boot, there will not be any XML file. So in a Spring Boot, container creation also, who is taking care of it? Spring Boot only taking care of it. How? So I'm telling you, many of the real-time guys doesn't know how Spring Boot is creating from where Spring Boot is creating a container. They doesn't know. So in this, in here itself, it is creating it. Go inside this run method. Go inside this run method. Here itself, they are creating it. Here itself, they are creating it. Many of them are not doesn't know how Spring Boot is creating a object. See here, create application context factory dot create application context container. It is creating a container. Who creating a container? Spring Boot internally creating a container. You no need to explicitly create a object. You no need to do anything. But sir, here, but sir, here in a spring here we have made a normal classes as a spring beans and placed in the .xml file, but whereas in a spring boot there is no xml file. Then how to make a normal class as a spring bean in a spring boot, or how to make a normal class as a spring bean in a spring xml based spring? We have mentioned in a application hyphen context.xml, and we have hand over that XML to the container. But here, how to make that one? So here, if you want to make in a Spring Boot or in a Spring annotation based approach, in a Spring Boot or in a Spring annotation based approach, if you want to make any class as a, if we want to make any class, any class as Spring Bean. Spring Bean means whose object can be created by container and maintained by container. If you want to make a any class as a Spring Bean, use a annotation called at the rate component annotation on top of a on top of the class. Use at the rate component on the top of a class. You can use it. Sir, okay, if I just make, if I have a class called class public class wish message provider only, like this I have it, sir. I have it. Okay, here I will mention it. Here I will just mention it as a at the rate component. Here I will just mention it as a at the rate component. So but yes, it will become a spring bean. But what is the bean id, sir? In XML we already given a bean id as well. How to specify the bean id for this wish message provider class? Right or wrong? We have provided a bean id as well in the spring, but here also we need to provide it. Now how to provide it? Yes, here you can provide it. Here you can provide it like this in between the double quotations. You can provide it. You can provide it. Now this is a spring bean. Now this is a spring bean. Now it is a spring bean. Now container only will create an object. It is a spring bean. Now container only will create an object. Got my point? Got my point? Okay. Then, then, the next step is, sir, we have a wish message provider class. So we this to make this wish message provider class has a spring bean. We have just used at the rate component annotation. We have just used at the rate component annotation on top of it. Then it became a spring bean. So then okay. But how to make a predefined classes as a spring bean, sir? Java, we have used java.util.date, java.util.date. Remember java.util.date class. Then how to make this date class as a spring bean? There we just mentioned in a XML file. But how in a Spring Boot to make a predefined class as a spring bean? How to make it? Since this is a user defined class, this is a user defined one, na? I only defined, na? User defined one. This is a user defined one. We easily made it as a spring bean by mentioning as a at the rate components are very, very important. It is a stereotype annotation. Don't worry, you will come to know in a Spring Core module. Still Spring Core module itself we haven't started. You will come to know in a Spring Core module what is meant by at the rate component annotation. What it will make. It is an alternative way to make a class as a Spring Bean. But my doubt here, my confusion here is like how to make a predefined classes as a Spring Bean. Spring Bean can be anything. It can be a user defined or it can be a predefined. How to make those that one? Anyone have any idea how to make predefined class as a Spring Bean? Anyone having any idea? Sir, in a Spring Boot, we can make a predefined class as a Spring Beans, predefined class as a Spring Bean using a annotation called at the rate bean annotation on top of a method. On top of a method whose return type is whose return type is whose return type is whose return type is class object, that class object only. For example, here I want to make a java.util.date class as a Spring Bean. Then how to do that? Pub, public date create date create date or get date. You can write anything, any name, get a date object or something. You can write anything, no issues. Get a date or get date obj, get date object. I'm writing here zero parameter. I won't pass any parameter here. Then here I will just return new date of like this. I'm just trying to return it. I'm just trying to return it. Okay. Now, now just to mention this is at the red bean. At the red bean, you can give if you want, you can give PD as a bean name. PD as a bean name you can give. So like this. Like this, you can make a like this, you can make a predefined class as a Spring Bean. Predefined class as a Spring Bean. Immediately, immediately you will get a doubt. Sir, what is meant by Spring Bean? Spring Bean is a class whose object can be created, whose object can be created by container and can be maintained by container. But why you are creating a object here explicitly? Why I'm creating a object here explicitly? Container only will do now. Why we need to do it? Why we need to do it? Sir, in a in a Spring Boot, most of the predefined classes, some of the some of the will predefined classes will come as a auto configured auto configured classes. That means by default those are Spring Beans. By default those are Spring Beans. But some of the classes are not auto configured. For example, object mapper class is there. Object mapper class. Object mapper class is a auto configuration object mapper. Object mapper class will come as a auto configuration. You no need to create a object like this and you no need to return it. You can directly use that one. You can directly use that one. No issues because it is by default Spring Bean. By default Spring Bean. By default Spring Bean. Some of the classes only will come. I'm not saying every class. Some of the classes only will come. So those classes, container only will create it internally. Container only will take care of everything. But here only, but here only, why we need to create a object explicitly means, sir, generally this, generally this at the rate bean method we will use to add some extra functionalities to that object as well. To that object as well. For example, here I just need a new data object. That's why I haven't used it. I haven't used it. But if you go to this, if you can go here, generally see here, driver manager data source. I'm using it. I'm just I just need a driver manager data source class object. I just need a driver manager data source class object to To connect to the database, anyhow, I need to give the driver class name, I need to give the URL, I need to give the username, I need to give the password. Right or wrong? Right or wrong? So explicitly, see, if driver manager data source wants to connect to the database, definitely I need to give the driver URL, driver class name, driver URL, password, and username. I need to give it. At these instances, we will use a at the rate bean annotation as well. That means at the rate bean annotation. See here, it is used to make mostly predefined classes as a Spring Beans. Example, date class. It is used at the method level to explicitly declare individual beans with some custom instantiation. Custom instantiation. See here, this a driver manager data source class. Here, I have some custom instantiation instead of predefined instantiation. Custom instantiation is there, like URL is there. See, username I'm giving in the system, password also I'm giving the system, or any username password like that. Okay, to make a predefined class as a Spring Beans, generally we will use a at the rate bean annotation. At the rate bean annotation, we will mention on top of a method whose return type is whatever the class you want, whatever the class object you, whatever the class you want to make as a Spring Bean, that class. Here I want to make a class as a date class as a Spring Bean, so that is why the return type is date only. So there I am just writing a return new date. I'm doing it. Return new date directly. I'm doing it. Now, now see here, making a making a this wish message provider class as a Spring Bean completed. Easy step. Making a date class as a Spring Bean is also a completed. Then what is left? What left? Injecting this date class to the injecting this date class to the wish message provider class is left. That's it. Right? How can you do that? How can we do that in a Spring Bean is just to mention a annotation called at the rate auto-void annotation. Sir, how at the rate auto-void annotation will work? Which injection can it will use? All these things we will do the postmortem in a at the rate while we are learning a core Spring Boot core module. This is just a to know the differences between the Spring and Spring Boot. I'm just teaching you. So if you want to inject a date class object to the if you want to inject a date class object to the wish message provider class, you can use a at the rate auto-void annotation. You can use at the rate auto-void annotation. You can use it. No problem. Okay. Okay. Then let's do it. Let's go and develop a application. You have enough maturity to do it. Then create a one more package called same package like com.tech.service class. I'm just doing it. Service class. I'm just doing it. So inside a service class, I'm just copying the same project. Same project here. What is there here? Same project. I will convert it to that one like that. See, here itself, I'm just converting. So same project. See here. This is the project. It is here we have it. Setter method project. Which message provider class is present and private date is there. Then setter method is there. Then some method is there. Some method is there. Right. So, but where I need to where I need to make a date class as a Spring Bean. So before that one, I want to make this class as a Spring Bean now. So how to make a this class as a Spring Bean in a Spring Boot using one annotation called at the rate component. Sir, in a Spring Boot, sorry, in a STS, just write first words and enter control space. So suggestions will come. Enter it. Yes, see, you no need to explicitly import it. Stereotype annotation is directly imported at the rate component. Give a bin ID. When you just mention at the rate component on any on top of any class, it became a Spring Bean. Then give the bean id. I'm just giving a bean id called WNP, same like that. Trying to give it. I'm trying to give it BNA. Or you have a some attributes, or you have a some attributes. See here, string. You have a some attributes name also, a value also there. See here, value is equals to WNP. Like this, you can give it. No issues. Directly you can give it. Like this as well, you can give it. Okay. Yes. Now making a wish message provider class as a Spring Bean is completed using a component annotation. But how to make a date class as a Spring Bean? So come here to the main class. This is a main class, the class which is annotated with the at the rate Spring Boot application. So this is a main application. Very, very important interview question as well, interview point of view. Explain at the rate Spring Boot application means annotation at the rate Spring Boot application. It is a combination of three annotations. I will tell you. I will tell you. Don't worry. I will tell you. So if you want, so now we need to mention. We need to make this class as a this date class as a Spring Bean, right? So what I will do, I will just take a one more package called com.tech.configuration configuration. Sir, here package name should be just whatever the packages you are writing, that is a child package. See here, I'm just using com.tech. Here I'm using com.tech.service. Here I'm using com.tech.configurations. So there is a reason. I will tell you why I'm creating a packages with the starting with the com.tech only. There is a reason, but as of now, just try to create like this only while you are creating while you are practicing it. So generally in a Spring, we have written in a com.tech.configuration, we have written a application context.xml. But here I am not writing. We do not have any application dot context.xml. Then what to do, sir? What to do? So in a Spring, what to do is, sir, in a Spring there is a XML file is there. Any file is there. Application context something application context.xml. So in a Spring, we have this XML file. Corresponding to this XML file in a Spring Boot, we have we have to we have a class which can be annotated with the at the rate configuration. If you mention any class, it may be any class. If you mention a at the rate configuration class annotation on top of that class, any class name, if you just mention a at the rate configuration annotation on top of that class, that means it will be same as a application context.xml. But Java people are very familiar with the classes, but Java people are not that much familiar with the XMLs, right? So we are much familiar. So what I will do, public class app config, like this I will write it, app config. Then here, then I will just mention this class as a at the rate configuration annotation. Here I will just mention at the rate configuration annotation on this class. That means this class is equal to the application context.xml file. Applications. Sir, immediately you may ask a question, sir. In a Spring, whenever a container is created, whenever we are creating a container, we are handovering this XML file to the container. But in a Spring Boot, how to hand over this class to the container? You no need to hand over it. It only will take care of automatically. It only will check where is the class called at the rate configuration class. It only will check it. Container only will check it, and container only will take care of it. Clear my point, sir? Here I'm just telling this a class which is annotated with the at the rate configuration is equal to the application context.xml in a Spring. But in a Spring, whenever we just created a container, that that we are handovering this XML file to the container. But in a Spring Boot, how this class file to be given to the Spring Boot. You can directly, you no need to do anything. Spring Boot itself, container itself will take care of it. Itself it can take care of it. No issues. Okay. So now I'm creating a one class, like any class name. You see, right click, new class. Then I'm just taking a class name as app config. App config. See super class, object class. Interfaces, I don't want to implement any interfaces. Then package name is com.tech.configuration. Finish. Finish. First, just mention at the rate configuration. The rate configuration. Control space. Suggestion game. At the rate configuration. That means this class is equal to the XML file. This class is equal to the XML file. What application-context.xml file is content? WNP class Spring, wish message provider class making it as a Spring Bean, and date class making it as a Spring Bean configuration is present there. But WMP wish message provider class is already made it as a Spring Bean using a at the rate component annotation. But how to make a app config, how to make a date class as a Spring Bean? So you already knows it. We need to mention at the rate Spring Boot at the rate bean annotation on top of a method whose return type is the class which is we are planning to make it as a Spring Bean. Get date object like this. I will write it. Return return new date class. Sir, import the date class. Control Shift O. See, I'm trying to import where date class is present. Java.util package. I'm just trying to import it using a shortcut called Control Shift O. Which one you want? I want Java.util.date like this, like this. Then mention this class as a at the rate spring. Sorry, at the rate bean. At the rate bean. Then you can give your own bean ID, whatever the bean ID you want, you can give it. Whatever the bean ID you want, you can give it. You can give it directly. You can give it. I will give PD, same like that one, same like that one, or give a date, DT something. Now, see, making a this message provider class as a Spring Bean, predefined Java classes are Spring Beans. Sir, no, all the predefined Java classes are not Spring Beans. Some of the classes only auto configured in a Spring Boot. Only some of the predefined classes like object mapper, to convert JSON into object. We will use JSON object mapper class. Only some of the predefined classes only Spring Boot externally made it as a auto configured Spring Beans. Why? Because so Spring Boot people has uh, Spring Boot people has recognized that classes are very widely we are using it. Very widely we are using it. So that's why to make the developer life easy, they made it as a auto configured Spring Beans. But those classes which are not coming through the auto configure, we need to create it. Yes, yes, auto configured means those classes are by default Spring Bean. By default Spring Beans. You just get it and use it. By default Spring Beans. You no need to explicitly like here how you are making a here date class you are explicitly making as a Spring Bean, right? Using a at the rate bean annotation. Date class you are explicitly making as a Spring Bean using a at the rate bean annotation. But auto configured classes are no need to explicitly make it as a Spring Bean. By default, those will come as a auto configured. You want me to show how what are all the classes now? So let's go to Spring Boot, Spring Boot auto configure package. See here, sir. Spring Boot auto configure jar is there na? Spring Boot auto configure jar is there na here? So the here, see, these many packages are there. If you can go to here, see this and all the classes are auto configured. Auto configured. I will show you. Let me show you some of the, see, in a Kafka template class will be there. Kafka properties, Kafka annotation driven configuration class. All these classes are um, auto configured. You no need to make explicitly as a Spring Bean. It will see security related also. Security related also. Web MVC, web client REST template. You can see REST client, REST template auto configuration class. See here, you no need to use this. You no need to create. You no need to explicitly make this class as a Spring Bean. It's came auto configured. It's already auto configured it. Got my point? It's already auto configured it. See here, they already make it as a @bean. See, sir, they already made it. You no need to do explicitly. See if you can see this also. They already made it. They already made it. See here. So some of this. So if I need to use predefined class, should to check. Yes, sir. You need to check. You need to first check whether this class is coming as a auto configured or not. If not, then only you need to make it. Yes, you need to do it. You need to check it. Sir, most of the Spring Boot related classes only will come as a auto configured. Java related classes will not come as a auto configured. Okay. Yes. Yes. So so we made it as a date class. We made it as a Spring Bean, and which what happened? Auto which message provider class also we made it as a Spring Bean. Right? Both we made it as Spring Bean. But how to inject it? Whereas in a Spring, we have used in a XML file, we have used one property called property. This tag we have used to inject. This tag we have used to inject a dependent class object to the target class. But how to do in a Spring Boot? In a Spring Boot, to inject a dependent class to the target class, we have one annotation called @auto void annotation is there. That annotation you need to mention on top of a dependent class, which we have mentioned in a target class, which we have mentioned in a target class. So like this you need to write. No need to go for any XML file. You just mention @auto void annotation. Nothing, nothing. Now go to now go to this test folder main class where we have a main class. So so here what we did it, this container we have created it. First step what we did it, container we have created, but we no need to create a container in a Spring Boot. We no need to create any container in a Spring Boot. Who is creating it? Spring Boot itself by default it is creating it. Itself it is by default creating it. See here, I will just take this application CTX and I will just mention here like this. Is there any issue? No issues. No issues. Application context CTX is equal to Spring application dot run. Spring application dot run like this. Then same thing again I will do it. Same thing again I will do it. CTX dot same thing. CTX dot get bin. Then if you want, once you got a object, call this one. I'm trying to do same thing like this. So WNP. So we have mentioned name as a WMP only, right? So that's why same giving I'm giving here. Same I'm giving here. Sorry, not this one. So same I'm giving here. Same I'm giving here. Okay, sir. There we have given a application hyphen context.xml. But here there will not be any XML file. So corresponding to the XML file, what we will have a class which is configured, a class which is annotated with the at the rate configuration. But this class we are not handovering to the container now. Then how it could be surrendered? That means container only internally will take care of it. Container only will take care of it. Internally, container only will search. Sir, how it will search, sir? Because with this annotation, it will scan it. With the help of this annotation, it will scan it where the at the rate configuration class is present. Where that class is present like that, with the help of at the rate component scan annotation, it can scan it. Don't worry, what is meant by this entire application we will see at the rate Spring Boot. Don't worry, this and all we will see. So then same process again, it will create a object, then everything. See here, yes, we made this message provider class as a Spring Bean using a at the rate component annotation, and we have provided a bean ID. Then where we made it as a date class as a Spring Bean. So date class we have made it as a Spring Bean. Since it is a predefined class, we have just used at the rate bean annotation on top of a method whose return type is that whatever the class we are doing it, whatever the class we are trying to make a Spring Bean. Yes, here we are trying to make a date class as a Spring Bean. So that's why I just added a return type as a date. Then always, always at the rate Spring Bean, at the rate bean annotation, we need to mention in a at the rate configuration class only. Always at the rate bean annotation, we need to mention in a at the rate configuration class only. Sir, let me tell you one instance. Sir, always whenever I attended an interview, popular question is what is the challenge, like biggest challenge you faced in this project, this kind of thing. They will ask the questions, right? So always I used to tell only one answer. You know what happened? So in one of the application, we just connecting to the database by giving the just 20 connections. I'm just limiting. We need to create only 20 connections at a time. So whenever the application is running, it is creating a 40 connections using a driver manager data source. Using this driver manager data source only, it is it is trying to create a 40 connection object. But I am giving a 20 only, but it is creating a 40. So then immediately I got some performance issues will come. But people will keep on asking why we restricted only 20, but why it is creating a 40. Then we did lot of R&D, but no, I didn't get it. Then after spending a 1.5 day or 2 days, then I came to know they have created a driver manager data source with the help of at the rate bean annotation, and this entire method, this entire method they have mentioned in a the class which is annotated with the at the rate component, the class which is annotated with the at the rate component. You are getting my point? So so because of that, it is keep on creating a two objects. It is creating a double connection. Sorry, it is creating. So remember, always at the rate a method which is annotated with the at the rate bean will be created in a at the rate configuration class. Sir, why in my case it is creating a 20 connections instead of 40? Why it is creating a 40 connections instead of 20? Instead of 20. Why So what happening is they have created a driver manager data source class object annotated with the at the rate bean at the rate annotated with the at the rate bean. They have written this entire method in a at the rate in a class where at the rate component is mentioned. Here they have just done it. Here they have just done it. So this class is executing two times. That is why it is creating a 20 connections every time. Then after 2 days, we came to know this is a small mistake. Then after 2 days, we came to know, oh, since this a method which is annotated with the bean mentioned in a class called at the rate components, that is why it is creating it. Let's move it to at the rate configuration class like that. We thought it and we moved it, then it is working fine. It's creating only 20 connections. So that is why just remember this method creation, a method which is annotated with the at the rate bean always should present in a class which is annotated with the at the rate configuration. So here we just made it as a date class as a spring bean using a bean at the rate bean annotation. We have given a bean ID as a date, no problem. Then so now how to inject it? So how to inject a date class to the wish message provider class using a at the rate provide annotation. We injected it. We injected it. Then then so here it's already creating a this Spring Boot is already creating a container. We no need to create explicitly. It is already creating it. Then get the bean ID for a this message provider class. Yes. Then bean dot get message method call. Yes. See here, everything I'm doing it. I'm just running it now. Run. See, right click. Run as a Java application. It's okay. Run as a Spring Boot application also. Okay. Run as a Spring Boot application. Okay. Run as a Spring Bean as a. It's okay. No problem. It's okay. No problem. Oh, it's already running. Port number is already. Yes. You can run in any way. Why still port? It is telling port number is running. Yes. You can run as a Java application. You can run as a Spring Boot application as well. Anything is fine. Anything is fine. See here, while whenever you just run the application, one banner is displaying. Spring banner is displaying, but this banner is will not come in a Spring Boot. Sorry, will not come in a Spring. Only this banner is will come in a Spring Boot. You can turn off this banner as well. If you don't want to this banner, you can turn off it. No issues. No problem. Then here some error is coming to display condition evaluation. Rerun your application debug. Something it is telling web server failed to start. Port 8080 already in use. Identify and stop the process where it is used. Web server start project application context. Failed to start the bean where it is already start available. Any project we are already run it. Did any project run it? Close this project. Close this project as well. I haven't run it any project. So same output will come, sir. Same output will come. Not at all a problem. This also close it. With the same what it is telling is with the port number 8080 it is already running. Let's change the port number if needed. Why to this? I'm going here. I want to run my application in another port. So spring dot server. There is a port number. Server dot port. Sorry, it's not spring. Server dot port. See here, there is a key. There is a key called server dot port. Here I will just mention 9090. 9090. Now right click, run as a Java application or a Spring Boot. So whenever you are just running it, see here, sir, whenever you are just running it, some first Spring banner is coming. You want to turn off this banner? Yes, you can turn off it. You can turn off it. How to turn off it? In a YAML file itself, you can write banner. You can write banner. See here, spring dot main dot banner hyphen mode off. I want off. Now banner will not come. Observe carefully. Earlier banner came now. Now observe carefully. Banner will not come. So like this, you can do your own banner as well. See, turn off it, turn off the server and run it. See banner, there is no banner. You can use your own banner. Like your name, if your name is Karthik, you can write it. If your name is like Monica, you can write your own name, no issues in a banner. If your name is Samir, you can write your own. That we can see how to do some custom banners. We will see, no issues. But see the observe the output. Good evening. Observe the output. Good evening, and some hash code is coming, and runtime class name also we are getting it. Same output we are getting it or not? Same output we are getting it or not, sir? So like this, sir. Like this. Like this you can do it. See how now tell me how very easy it is. Spring is easier, Spring Boot is easier. See, in a Spring Boot, if it is a Spring, you need to create a XML file, you need to do it, all these things you need to take care of it. But here, nothing. You just create something, you just make it. Sir, here, see, in a Spring Boot, I will not even give a I will not even give a bean ID as well. I will not even give a bean ID. Here also I don't want to give a bean ID. Here also I don't want to give a bean ID. Sir, if you are not giving a bean IDs, what happens? By default, bean ID will be there. By default, the class name it will Spring Boot will take a class name as a bean ID. Class name as a bean ID. So how it will take is like this. It will take it. Class name is here, but first one is small one. First one is small one. First one is small one. Like oh sorry, sorry. Every time you need to turn off the server. Every time you need to turn off the server. Don't worry. In a Spring Boot core itself, we will add a Spring Boot DevTools jar. Once you use the DevTools jar, now you no need to turn off it again and again. Now see here, same output. But sir, here, same output came now, right? Same output came now. Now I want to, I want you to observe one thing, sir. Here, here something message is coming. Tomcat started on port number 9090. Like this, it is coming. Tomcat started in port number 9090. Like this, it is coming. Sir, I haven't added any Tomcat server, na sir. Did I added any Tomcat server related jars in a pom.xml? Sir, server means to run the local, to run any application in a local, we will use Tomcat. Very lightweight application, sir. This Tomcat is a very lightweight server. So that's why in a local we will use Tomcat server only. Even in a real time also, most of the cases you will use in a local Tomcat server only. But here, sir, I haven't added a Tomcat server related jars, but still application is running in a Tomcat. How it is possible is, sir, by default Tomcat server will come. Spring Boot will come with the three default servers. One is Tomcat, another one is Undertow, another one is um, Jetty, Jetty server. So by default, Spring Boot will give three auto configured servers. But whereas in a Spring, there is no auto configured servers. There is no auto configured. There is no in a Spring. There is no. Sir, I missed your ping. I missed your ping. Where I can see. Where I can see. Yes, here I can I see here. Yes, let me stop and check. Yes. If not define date as a bean and keep auto add. Yes, yes, do it. We'll do it, sir. Immediately we'll get a exception saying bean creation, bean not created exception, bean creation exception, sir. Okay, let's do it. Comment this one. comment this one and try to stop the server and try to run this one. Bean creation exception. So what happens is IOC content here, here you just auto void it now. So IOC container will try to inject the dependent class, date class to inject to the this message provider class. Then if it is trying to create, if it trying to inject it, immediately we will get a exception saying bean creation exception. That means container is trying to inject the date class to the this message provider, but a date class is empty. Object is not created because it is not a Spring Bean. So immediately we'll get exception. See here, see sir, see here. This means required bean type of Java dot required. See failed date in com.tech.service which message provider required a bean type Java dot util dot date, but that could not be found. But it could not be found. So bean creation exception will come. Bean creation exception came. See here, unsatisfied dependency exception. Unsatisfied unsatisfied dependency exception. Container is try to inject the date class to the this message provider class. Date class object to the this message provider class object. But date class object is not created. Why we are not created date class object means it is not a Spring Bean. So immediately we'll get an exception. So we should definitely we should make that class as a Spring Bean. Now see here. Now we made it as a Spring Bean. Now do it. Yes, sir. Those many classes. How many classes you have mentioned? How many classes you have mentioned as a Spring Bean? Those many classes it will create it. For one class, how many objects will be created is your doubt, right? Let's say here my my first Spring Boot application is there, na? So for this class, how many object a Spring Boot can create it is your question, right, sir? That's a very nice question. It depends on a scope. It depends on a scope of a Spring Bean. If a scope of a Spring Bean is singleton, if a scope of a Spring Bean is singleton, that means how many requests you have given. So one object only will create it. One object only created. If you how many times? Sorry, if the scope of a Spring Bean is singleton, how many times you are using it? How many times you are using it? But only one object will be created. If scope of a Spring Bean is prototype, if scope of a Spring Bean is prototype, that means one object per one object per one usage or one request will be created. One request, one object. So whenever you are using a new object will be created. Whenever you are using a new object will be created. If a scope of a if a scope of a Spring Bean is prototype. If a scope of Spring Bean is a request, for every request from the front end, one object will be created. Every request for the front end, one object will be created. Like this. It depends on a scope. It depends on a scope. Sir, if no scope is defined, by default scope is singleton scope. By default scope is singleton scope. That is why see here, I'm going to use multiple two times I will call. Three times I will call this get to message this message method. Three times I will call it. Let's do it one thing. Here, what do it? Sys trace. I'm going to do it. Sys trace. I will just do instead of sys trace. I will just here. I will just write like this. Oh, I will just write this. Sir, that is a good question, sir. Perfect question. How many objects will be created by container per request? So it depends on a scope. So if it is a singleton, only one object will be created. So to prove one object is created or multiple object created, just check here. Yes. See here. So three times I am calling. Three times I am calling. I just told by default a spring beans scope is singleton only. By default singleton only. That means three times same hash code should come. Now turn off the server. Yes. Right click, run as a Java application. See sir. Now here see, observe carefully. Observe carefully here. Three times hash code is same. 449, 449, 449. Three times hash code is same or not? That means same object only reusing or not? Three times same object only reusing or not? Yes, reusing it. For example, here I will just mention the scope as a, I will just mention the scope as a, I will just mention scope as a prototype. Prototype. I will just mention a scope as a prototype. Now, if I just mention a scope as a prototype, now what happens? See here. But don't worry, application. Let's turn off the server. It's already been used now. Now, run as a Java application. Now, see here. See here. Oh, I might written. I might written a wrong spelling is written at the rate scope. Yes, here. Yes, like this. We just mention a scope as a prototype. So every time whenever you are requesting one object, new object will be created. So this is called Spring Bean scopes, sir. This is called Spring Bean scopes. Don't worry, six scopes will be there. Scope per class, sir, not for per class. Per class. Okay, per class only it will be there. 675. Oh, I might written it wrong, but let me show you here. So scope. See here, six scopes are there. Singleton scope, prototype scope, request scope, session scope, application scope. WebSocket scope is deprecated, sir. It deprecated. It deprecated. Value is equals to prototype. Sorry, I just mentioned. I haven't mentioned it as a one. Prototype. Yes, you can use like this, or you can use a predefined method as well. Session something, some class is in some method is there. Session say configurable bean factory dot enum, you can use it. Session scope dot prototype, like this you can use it. So immediately we'll add a dev tools. So like this, sir, like this you can use it. Okay, got my question? Oh, I think some mistake we are doing it. Let it be. I will tell you. No issues. It's again creating a same one class only. But if you just mention a class as a prototype, then it will, for every request it will create a new object. Okay, this one. This one, sir. So Spring Boot. This is a Spring Boot. See, now tell me the advantages of Spring Boot. How simple it is. There is no XML. There is no XML, and some of the most of the classes are auto configured. See how simple it is. So this is the, and easily we can make it as a Spring Bean. So lot of advantages are there. So tomorrow we'll see the differences between the Spring Bean and Spring We'll see the Spring and Spring Boot. Tomorrow we'll see. Then we'll start a Spring Boot core module. The core module we'll see, sir. Here tomorrow we'll see this one. So like this, Spring Boot has evaluated, sir. So since these many advantages are there with the Spring Boot, so widely industry is using. See, primary feature is a Spring Boot is dependency injection. Sir, please share the PDF, sir, if possible. Yeah, it is already there, sir. It's already added in a drive. It's already been added in a drive. It's already added. Okay, let me stop the